Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Second Page podcast, where we are talking past the point. I am one of your co-hosts, Joseph Oswald, or as my Twitter handle would say, Joseph Sowald. With me, as always, my good friend and commentator, Jay Martinez.
Jay Martinez here, everyone. Welcome back. Episode 25. Whose lawsuit is it anyway?
Woo!
And with us, as always, Sir Johnson behind the big board.
Behind the big D, the big brown D.
Always,
say what's up, man.
I'm just the guy behind the R squared.
Yeah.
What can I say?
All right.
He's the square of the R Squared Network.
Yes.
Well, we're starting a little late this week, so let's try and jump right in.
Was that a dig at me?
That was a light dig at you. It's okay. We've been late for multiple reasons, bro. It's all right.
Do
it's
I
all right.
have
No
a
one's
shovel?
hating here.
None of us have a shovel here. No digging.
All right. I'm just gonna wait at the bus stop.
You're gonna.
Run me over. Okay.
All right. So all right. So
read the rundown.
Episode
Georgie.
25. Let's go with the rundown.
Here we go.
So North Korea goes for gold in diplomatic efforts to seduce Trump with the one thing that he cannot resist. President's lawyer lawyers up, dropping suits faster than a tailor on Mad Men. Giuliani drops drag for Don, showing that even after 9/11, he can still try to clean up a mess on American soil. Grassley goes long to pass Mueller protection bill after Senate leader Mitch McConnell.
Wow. Was that a Freudian slip or was that a...
No, I actually wrote that in.
Okay.
Mitch McConnell claims no vote will be brought to the floor. Joe's arch enemy Neil Gorsuch puts on a big boy robes to concur with liberals in an immigration case at the Supreme Court. Cuba selects a new little known leader of non-Castro-nomical proportions. Starbucks offers cuffs with black coffee, while LA Fitness shows us how racism works out. Join us live, comment, or call in. Feel free to message us during the rebroadcast. All trolls must have a signed permission slip from their parents and at least 3 references before coming out to play. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump in.
So it sounds like you put a lot of work into it.
I did, and I like it because I don't have to read it. I like seeing if anything I write will trip him up.
Yeah, like it did with 11D.
11D.
Yeah, 11D. Yeah, fuck you, man.
Yeah, no, it's funny though.
All right, so...
All right, Georgie, bring us in.
Bring us in.
Hey,
All right.
Jason, what's happening?
Hey, what's up, Jason?
Oh, Jason, right at the beginning.
Hey,
like
and my aunt from Ecuador's tuning in. Hey, Lorena, how are you?
It's probably within the same time zone.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, they are same time. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess the breaking news which came out yesterday, which we'll try not to say too long on because we think it's a farce, is the fact that North Korea has now said that they are halting their nuclear program. They're closing up some of their facilities, and Trump supporters and Trump are chalking this up to his personality and what he's done in North Korea, and leading up to the summit next month. And Kim Jong-un will be meeting with the South Korean leaders, I think next week or in a few weeks. Joe and Steve, do you think this deserves any merit on the part of Trump? Do you think this is significant? Or, in my opinion, what I think is that it just signals a mission accomplished for North Korea. It just means they got the nukes. They know how to work them, and that's all it means. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think they dropped their thing down, flipped it, and reversed it.
Wow.
Because it is clear and obvious. It is clear and obvious.
See, this guy's back with a tan.
I know.
And
He's feeling a little blackish today. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
All right. Listen, in North Korea, no matter what country you are the dictator or president of, you're not necessarily a stupid person. You're not inept. You pretty much know what you're doing.
Yeah.
North Korea has already tested tons of nuclear bombs. They've caused earthquakes from it. They fired missiles over Japan. They've already claimed they have a nuclear missile that can reach the United States. What further need do they have to continue testing? This is a country that has a terribly backwards economy that is mostly agrarian, where most people live in poverty, 25 million people, and they very rarely even have electricity. It's expensive to continue conducting and building nuclear weapons if you already have them. He did not commit to denuclearization. He's saying that they're committing to not moving forward with more tests or with...
Well, he did say denuclearization. However, he means it in a very different way than we mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and because we have satellite images of nuclear reactors being fired up. They're still working. They still think they have a right to nuclear power, to energy, to weapons. They're basically dangling a little golden carrot in front of Donald Trump saying, hey, remember that summit you promised us? Don't forget about that. Because Kim Jong-un, being a very young dictator, understands that he's dictator for life, that he will be the leader there for a long time, and that the only way to continue having Cavassier and models and having Dennis Rodman come visit him is to have a functioning economy.
Yeah.
Hey,
Now-
Dom, what's happening?
Now, with the 10 different UN security sanctions that are on North Korea, affects about 97% of their export economy. So while I would agree that some of the sanctions are affecting them and that they do need to find some way around it because they just can't continue doing things on the low, you know, like
Yeah.
trading off Russian ships with medical equipment or food and having weapons underneath of it, or getting oil and coal from China, despite the fact that they're supposed to be under sanctions, they have to do it in secret. So what I see here is an attempt to convince Donald Trump that he's had an effect on them. He's
Yeah.
playing him against himself. And I
Exactly.
don't think that really happened. I believe that this is, just like you said in the beginning, somewhat of a farce, but it's also something that will continue the talk, that it keeps him in the news, it keeps it relevant, it makes sure that we know that by the end of May, early June, that this summit will happen. And if it doesn't happen, it puts the blame on Donald Trump, not Kim Jong-un.
And I also find it funny that Trump this week earlier said that he would be willing to literally walk away from the table if the negotiations didn't go the way he wanted it to. And I think a day or two later this comes out. So again, I think he is playing the long game. Maybe Trump has a little bit to do with it, but I don't think so. I think he knows that China's now backing him. South Korea, there's a president there that's willing and able to work with North Korea. He campaigned on it. It's what he wants. I think it is long overdue.
Well, remember, we all agreed that if, you know, the Trump administration accomplished anything
I'll give him
legitimate,
credit.
that we give him
I'll
credit.
give him credit.
You know, he did say that over Easter they've admitted that Mike Pompeo
Yeah,
in
he was
secret
over
met
there, and they've been
with
setting
Kim
up.
Jong-un.
Yeah,
And that despite that, they still don't have any kind of a real deal with Japan. So,
yeah.
you know,
So,
it kind of sucks.
You, Jay, say you don't believe it.
It's not necessary. I don't
You
believe
think
it.
it's a photo op.
That's all I think it is. I mean,
So
yeah, that's all it is. You know, until they literally give up their nukes, till we get UN peacekeeping forces
They will
in
never
there
do that.
to let exactly. So I just think it means mission accomplished. We have our bombs. We're gonna chill out because we're about to meet with the president of South Korea. We're
Right.
about to meet. He's got a seat at the big boy table now, and that's all he's wanted. His grandfather wanted it. His father wanted it. He's probably closest to attaining it, and this is what he needs to do it. He's not, like Joe said, he's not a dumb guy. I mean, he's an autocrat. He's a power monger, but he's not an idiot, I think.
okay.
So
So
what do you feel?
I feel a lot of things. You know,
All
I
right.
feel pretty.
Witty and
I feel
wise.
pretty.
Yes.
Oh,
So
so-
no, but so first of all I want to know is what do we want, right? If this is a negotiation, what is our agenda and goal?
It doesn't
right?
matter what our agenda and goal is. It matters what Donald Trump's agenda and goal
And I
is.
don't
And
think
that's
he
just
said
making a
that.
deal.
Well,
Yeah, but he hasn't said
but-
what that deal
but
is.
Donald
Ending
Trump,
the Korean War.
Yeah, but what are we
fortunately-
conceding for it?
fortunately or unfortunately, is speaking for America.
Yes,
so
he is.
whatever he decides is what we're asking.
There will be
for.
two main things that this will not happen without concessions to. North Korea will demand that we remove the 28,500 troops from 38th parallel, and they will demand that we overturn some sanctions that we have on their economy.
If they're
Okay.
willing to give up the nukes, I think that's fair game.
But again,
I
they're
would.
not.
They're not going to give up the
going
nukes.
to give up the nukes. And what I wonder about this is the Iran deal needs to be recertified.
Is it
Right.
up for recertification already? I know he did it
It's
last
soon.
time.
It-
Okay.
It will be up for that soon. So
If
my
he
question
doesn't
is,
recertify, though, then what incentive does Kim Jong Un
That's
and
my
that government
question.
have to
Mhm.
continue
that is
working?
exactly
Mhm.
my
They
question.
know that the American presidency lasts 4, sometimes 8 years, and that at the whim of whoever happens to get elected, any deal that was made, unless it's basically enshrined in our Constitution,
Can be overturned.
Can be overturned. It can be worked out that, you know, Donald Trump walked us out of TPP, and now he's talking about walking right back in just because it makes him look good at the
Sliding
time.
in the DMs of TPP.
Yeah.
No, so okay. Now the next question is what concessions will we make? And I also want to point out, when North Korea says denuclearization, they mean denuclearizing everyone around them. That means we move ships. That means everybody shuts their shit down. They're not talking about they are going to stop having their missiles. That's like, oh, you want us to stop to get rid of these missiles, get rid of yours first. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah, right.
We need to be clear when they say denuclearization that it's not the same thing that we normally think of. It's not what Iran has agreed to.
Yeah. I mean, we can sit here and speculate all day. We're definitely not at the table. We don't know what's being discussed. Trump hasn't put out a formal proposal yet. And maybe he shouldn't, until they're closer, until things are more, certain that they are going to meet. With that being said, I agree with your assessment of it. Yeah, they don't want, our ships there in the peninsula. But at the same time, we have allies in South Korea. We have allies in Japan. We have allies in Australia, New Zealand. I don't think we should be there militarily if there isn't an imminent threat. So I think it shouldn't be if or who's doing what. It should just be an equal pullback.
All right, we'll tell that to the 180 countries that we have military bases in.
Okay.
I know. And again,
American colonialism.
But should we be doing exactly that's what it is? Should we be in every country having bases?
Question.
I don't think we should be.
If the Korean War is officially ended, is that a path to unification of the Koreans?
Well, that is something China does not want.
Yeah.
Many times they've already said
and
they
what
do
would
not
that
want
look
that.
like?
But my question is, maybe China doesn't want it, but does North Korea need China if they have South Korea?
Listen, it would basically the best case scenario
Good point.
is that they demilitarize the border, that they get rid of a lot of the armament buildup, which is a boon to the economy, and you sell it to someone else or you stop paying for its maintenance, and you have two separate countries. It's kind of like having North and South Dakota. It's two different states, but they kind of have their own economies. They kind of have their own thing. They all speak pretty much the same language. They all kind of look the same. But you're never going to have a united Korean peninsula. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
They've been separate for so long. This armistice has lasted for so long.
And then who gives
again,
up what?
Try to remember too that at this negotiating table, if Donald Trump wants to talk, ending the Korean War, as it were, then you have to understand that we were technically at war with China and North Korea, that the Chinese sent 1 million soldiers over the border to push us back in 1953, that South Korea was not a signatory to this. So negotiations don't necessarily even need to involve South Korea, which is kind of why Donald Trump some time ago said things like South Korea needs to start paying more for these military bases that we have there. Japan needs to start checking out more of their own defense. So now the whole region is militarizing.
Yeah, and is he wrong in that?
Not necessarily. I don't disagree with him.
I don't disagree with him.
But I do agree with him, though, that if we want all the benefits that come from having a military base over there, if we want to dictate how the policy of Eastern Asia should be done, and if we want a seat at that table, then we do need to pay for it. I mean, that's what empires do. If you want a seat all over the world, like no other country has, I mean, like the British Empire used to have, but they collapsed for a reason.
Yeah, but do you really think that China doesn't want a unified Korea?
I do.
Or do you think that they don't want a unified Korea with American presence in it because then they're going to have an American presence on the border? What happens if...
That's exactly why they sent 1 million troops over in the first place.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Let's a dream scenario. I'm not naive to think that this would ever happen, but let's say theoretically, the U.S. pulls out their troops. The North and the South figure out a way to reunify without an American presence in the peninsula.
Use the trade from South Korea and the military from North Korea to protect yourself, and you are a sovereign nation that doesn't really need.
Okay, but then two problems happen. Well, one thing is that okay with China? I think they would be. I don't think they would oppose that. And B, I mean, what would that really have to take? Because I mean, South Korea is a democratically elected. Their leadership is a democratically elected leadership. They're a democratic country. I don't think they're going to just hand the reins over to Kim Jong-un. So I think it would have to be him. Maybe, I don't know. How do you...
I tell you what, it'd be far more difficult than the reassimilation of the states after the Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I don't even know what that would look like.
Honestly, because that's what the Korean War is. It's a civil war.
Yeah.
Where
so no like Jefferson David.
No side's going to concede. Kim Jong-un's not going to be like, let's be co-presidents. Like,
yeah, no, he's not. Or give me a term limit.
Yeah.
Let me come in here and in 8 years.
There's never going to be a situation where you are going to see the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Republic of South Korea getting together and saying we are one Korea. It's just not going to happen unless there is unless China decides to invade them both, or Japan invades them both, or Russia invades them both, and they have to side together. You never know. Japan might in fact do that. I mean, we're talking about one of the most ancient civilizations in the world. China and Japan. And Japan was a colonial power in Korea, which is the reason why North Korea has the propaganda they do. They say they will never be colonized again.
You know what? You just brought something up that we hadn't discussed before the show, so I think this would be great to get both your reactions. So, I read earlier this week that an island off of Japan, which is in Japanese waters, it belongs to Japan. They just found an unlimited, I think it's like 400 or 500 years worth of untapped natural resources, which are like minerals, which are used to make LED screens, you know, the guidance chips and missiles. I mean, they just hit the jackpot. They're thinking
like coltan or what?
I don't know exactly the name. We can look it up if you want to put it up, I guess. But basically, it was a couple of minerals. It wasn't just one mineral. And apparently, China has had the monopoly on these minerals for a while. And if Japan can go and extract these and work them out, and again, this is part of their country. This isn't up for debate. They found like almost 400, 500 years worth of this in a centrally located place to mine and to. So what would happen if Japan all of a sudden just becomes this economic power over there that can compete with China almost tit for tat?
Japan is an economic power.
They are, but not in the sense that they're selling that.
Hey, by the way, Dom says it's called vibranium, guys.
Yeah,
is it called? Oh.
That stuff is in Wakanda.
Yeah, wrong country, man.
Wrong continent.
Wrong continent. But I mean, just food for thought. We could look at it later. We could put up something on the site later. But I found it interesting, and Japan's very excited about it. And I think that would be. Why would you have to use military force when you could just use economic force, which is what's been going on lately, right? I mean, all our wars or de facto wars right now are tariff wars, trade wars, things like that. So I'm not too sure Japan would invade. But anyway, I mean, I have nothing more.
Listen, they're remilitarizing for a reason. North Korea firing missiles over top of them.
Yeah, they're militarizing because Donald Trump's saying take care of yourself.
To,
and I don't think he's wrong in that sense.
Scientists found a deposit of rare earth minerals off the coast.
Yeah, rare earth minerals.
Just called rare earth
because China has tightly controlled the world's supply of these minerals, using everything from smartphones to electric car batteries.
What
could be a game
minerals?
changer.
I don't know their names, but I mean, the CNN article I wrote, it broke it down. I'm not a scientist. I probably couldn't pronounce half of those.
Well, the minerals contain one or more of 17 metallic rare earth elements.
Hey, what's up, Jonathan? Mm-hmm. He serves our country. He is in the Navy, so thank you for your service, John. I went to high school with the kid. Yeah.
Jonathan's the man.
Jonathan's the man.
Driving a boat.
All right.
Okay, so one of them is called yttrium, which is YTTRIUM, they found enough to supply the global demand for 780 years. Dysprosium for 730 years, europium for 620 years, and terbium for 400.
It's pretty much unlimited. That's pretty much unlimited.
Maybe we should go and buy some stock in whatever companies produce.
Yeah, I mean it's within.
That wouldn't be a bad idea.
Within Japan's exclusive economic zone, so the island nation has the sole right to the resources there, unless they're invaded.
Unless they're invaded.
Borders are so passe these days.
They are. I mean, China doesn't care about borders.
Listen, if you don't build a wall. If you don't build a wall, it's not a real border.
Or you just build yourself an island. Yeah. And then call it,
I just want to know who was the one. I mean, who was looking for. I'm going to go search for europium.
I have no idea, dude. But it happened. And I think it's a big
island, an uninhabited island.
I'm going to assume it was a drunk guy.
Yeah, he just stumbled. He tripped and hit his head on.
He was having a few beers while he was fishing off the coast, and he just ran his boat right into it. He's like, "Oh shit!
Hey,
here we are."
Was that yttrium I just tripped over?
No.
That's a lot of yttrium.
You're welcome, Jonathan. Thank you, man.
Japanese version of Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I think that's hilarious.
I'm all for it.
Anyway,
all right.
Do we have anything else to add to Korea?
No.
All right.
But we do have something very interesting to talk about.
Which is
lawyers.
Lawyers lawyering up.
Lawyers lawyering up, indeed.
So, Joe, you tackle this one, Joe. You're a semi-legal expert.
This is a conundrum.
So why Mike Cohen flip?
Okay, Mike Cohen is being pursued by the Southern District of New York.
I love that picture.
It's a state. It's a state action which is unpardonable by the President of the United States.
Yep.
So currently, Donald Trump's legal team, which has just decided to hire former drag queen and mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, to represent him because they want to negotiate an end to the Mueller investigation.
Which Giuliani said he could wrap up in 2 weeks?
Giuliani said he could do a lot of things, but he still has yet to be appointed to anything. But he was one of the only ones defending Donald Trump during the Access Hollywood tape release and other such things. He's been an avid defender of him. He's an avid, hardcore conservative cheerleader, just like Newt Gingrich, where it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong as long as it sounds right. And it's a right with a capital R. So Rudy Giuliani joined the team. They are worried that Michael Cohen, Trump's one of his longest-serving attorneys, has been with him for
he considers him 30 years.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of reports in the New York Times and Time
Just
Magazine.
To be clear, this is Rudy Giuliani on the screen now, right?
The woman in drag.
Yeah, that's
Rudy
him.
Giuliani.
Yeah. Did you see the video?
I did not see the video.
We were
It's
hoping that you could
disturbing.
find it and then post it. So if you can find the video of Donald Trump and Rudy
pours
Giuliani.
perfume on his bust and puts his face into his chest and smells it and goes,
Yeah.
Trump does that to Giuliani?
Yes.
Yeah,
There's
there's a video with both of them.
Go find it and then put it up.
I don't
while
know
I'm
when
talking.
this was recorded. Trump looks a lot younger than he looks like
What
now. Yeah, it was making the rounds yesterday in the news.
happening?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
So
But
okay.
this is our president.
So
but whatever.
Well, Giuliani's not.
No, well,
No,
Trump
he
is
tried
the
to be.
president.
He tried to be.
Yeah.
So what we have is a situation where Michael Cohen is being pursued after technically a tip-off on the Mueller investigation for things, tax obstruction, all this other stuff. They seized information from his home, his hotel room, and his office, including cell phones, documents, records, things that date back 20 or 30 years.
Conversation recording.
They believe that he has connections to crime bosses and things like that.
Illegal taxi business.
Illegal everything's.
Yeah.
So they think that Donald Trump may have also partially funded some of that. He's since dropped his lawsuit against BuzzFeed for claiming defamation.
Which I thought was great.
He's considering dropping a lawsuit, a countersuit against Stormy Daniels, even though she is pursuing that and is very well aware that she has a case at this point.
Speaking of Stormy Daniels, is at this point, is Michael Avenatti an American hero?
That's her attorney, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's an American hero, and if he plays his cards right, he might end up seeing the end of this case.
Yeah.
Because if anybody remembers the DC Madam, you piss off too many people in DC and you end up hanging yourself in your garage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's also like an attention whore, but that's...
So what? That's
I mean, that's working.
An attention whore with a
be.
porn star works out very well.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you need to be when you're going up against, Twitter fingers over
But
here.
I mean, this is like the reality TV presidency. So
yeah,
like,
so I mean, it all makes sense.
Fight
It all
the
fits.
battle in reality TV.
Yeah.
Well, so as of yet, the court battles are not working out in the favor of the president or his administration because the actions taken against Michael Cohen were approved by Trump appointees. They were approved by his Justice Department, and similarly, the Attorney General of New York, I hope I'm remembering this correctly, Eric Schneiderman, is seeking authority to pursue people pardoned by Donald Trump in state court for violating New York law, because Trump recently has considered pardoning Scooter Libby, who was Dick Cheney's chief of staff, who was convicted of obstruction, lying to the FBI, and such things when Valerie Plame was outed as an undercover CIA agent because her and her husband had presented information to Dick Cheney and the White House that countered their view that Iraq was producing weapons of mass destruction.
And yet Andrew McCabe is an enemy of the state.
Well, yes. So Andrew McCabe was fired and is now suing for defamation, for wrongful termination.
And he should.
Against the president, even though it's unlikely in court that might go through because the president's power to fire people is somewhat ironclad. A court could find that there was malice or not just cause for firing him, but that's shady stuff, and even a constitutional scholar would have some trouble telling you whether Andrew McCabe will have a case there. Point is, it's going to keep all of Donald Trump's attorneys very busy. Michael Cohen has 2 children and a wife. He doesn't want to lose all the money he's made over the past 30 years. It's very likely that he could give some information out.
He
and
does have
it is
a
widely
Ray Liotta vibe.
Well, he worked with a lot of crime, worked
Goodfellas.
against a lot of those crime family things. But they believe
Trump's team's getting ready for it. They're anticipating it. So.
I'm just like picturing the movie where Michael Cohen is in a witness protection program on his lawn, reminiscing about the old days of doing cocaine and working with.
Listen,
Robert
a lot of people say that Donald Trump is only attempting to pardon Scooter Libby because they believe that he wants to send a message that anybody that gets prosecuted by the Mueller investigation, that he has your back and he will protect you.
No, you can't.
No, that's why Eric Schneiderman is
fucked.
seeking the power to go after people pardoned by the president, because pardoning does not mean that you are free. I mean, Scooter Libby was convicted and George Bush commuted his sentence. He was convicted and sentenced to 30 months in prison.
Federal crime.
Yes. He was sentenced to 30 months in prison. George Bush commuted the sentence but did not pardon him. And Dick Cheney, up until like the last day of George Bush's, presidency, just pestered him left and right to the point where they strained their friendship to the point where they don't even talk, I think. And, even in George Bush's memoirs, he's like, I've never seen Dick Cheney so angry when I refused to pardon Scooter Libby. They just commuted the sentence. And Donald Trump claims that Scooter was treated unfairly, that even though he's convicted of leaking and all these things that he accused James Comey of and Andrew McCabe of, that he still thinks that this person deserves to be pardoned, even though in 2015 and 2016, or 2015, when they were ramping up his campaign, hey Jake, thanks for tuning in. You're a good kid. Hope your children are all right.
What was ominous.
What? No, Jake Doherty.
No, I know, but hope your children are all right.
Yeah, because he had a baby. I knew him before he had the kid, and then I never got to meet his kid, so I hope they're doing all right.
Okay.
Cool. He's a nice guy. He's been tuning in since episode 1. He's been tuning in since episode 1.
Well, good on you.
Yeah. So Donald Trump wanting to go, and back in 2015, he was asked whether or not he would pardon Scooter Libby, and he said that it's inconsequential, doesn't matter to anybody. There's no reason to even talk about it. So now he's doing it because he wants to show his buddies that he's got their back.
That sounds exactly like what Mitch McConnell said about Trump firing Mueller and putting.
Hey, Francisco.
Francisco. Sir. Sorry, administrator from our university.
Yeah. He helped both of us get back into and through college.
We love you, man.
We owe him a lot.
Okay.
But all right,
that sounds like some.
No patronage here. I'm not going to appoint him. Okay. I'm going to appoint him to this empty chair that we have over here.
But Joe, you were not here last week because you were in beautiful sunny Hawaii, sipping Mai Tais and jumping off waterfalls.
And pina coladas.
So I do want to give you 1 minute to go back and, Steve and I, we had our chance to give our piece on Ryan and his retirement at 48. What do you have to say about Aaron Rodgers?
Are we skipping?
Well, we were just gonna give me a quick recap of last week because.
I'm sorry because we did forget Hannity.
Well, okay. So Sean Hannity was revealed as the third client of of Michael Cohen, and he claims that he wanted to remain a secret. He wanted to remain anonymous, and that he doesn't want any part of this. He says that his client attorney privilege was violated, even though he then claimed that he has never paid for anything, that he only asked him for advice.
Falls on him.
$10.
Yeah, he didn't even give him $1, like in Breaking Bad when he had Saul take $1 out of his pocket and give it to him so that he can give him advice and be protected by attorney-client privilege.
That's what he claims. But attorney-client privilege, he could renege that on his own by the comment he said. He's like, he was never my lawyer.
The information seized in Michael Cohen's property is being held by the federal government, and he petitioned to be able to privately review the information that they seized first. The judge struck that down, said that by May 17th or 7th, I can't remember specifically, that the federal government, the FBI, would have to provide copies of everything they seized to the Michael Cohen attorney, and that it would take a little bit longer because they have to download information off of old cell phones and old computers and stuff like that. He wanted all that information. Problem with Sean Hannity is that he's been an avid, just Trump loyalist, which again is the only thing that matters to the president. He's known to be somewhat of an advisor to the president.
De facto chief of staff.
De facto, they talk to each other. That he basically is speaking to Donald Trump from his desk on his show.
Trump gets his marching orders from
Fox and Friends and Hannity. So come on, you watch their episode and he's tweeting 5 minutes later.
The fact is that this has basically become state-run propaganda and media, and anybody that doesn't believe that at this point is just so naive.
Remember when
Sean
I said
Hannity
media runs state?
Yeah, Sean Hannity did not reveal that he was a client of Michael Cohen, even though he says he didn't pay anything to him, and he had Michael Cohen on the show, and he defended Donald Trump and this invasion of privacy and all this other stuff, but had no problem with going after every little tidbit of information he could find on Hillary Clinton. I mean, we're talking about just someone who's not even a conservative anymore. He's an ideologue. This is someone who does not deserve to be behind a news desk or behind a desk and call it
We can say that about a lot of the people on the right now.
You
who are just staunchly defending a guy that should not be.
Hey, is Laura Ingraham back from her vacation yet?
She's back, and she apparently has higher ratings, even though her her sponsors keep dropping out, but her ratings are booming in response to everything.
Wonder
but
where
hey,
that's coming from.
White America.
Yeah.
Anyways,
well, hold on, but don't blame that on all white America.
No. I'm not blaming it on all white America, but come on, let's look up the demographics.
Did you give her money?
Am I wrong?
Did you give who money?
Did you give Laura Ingraham money?
I did not.
Okay.
The only person I've ever given money to politically that I regretted because I was just in a moment of desperation. Was Gary Johnson, independent?
Yeah, you regretted that.
Even $5, and I was immediately like, I'll never see that again. This is a waste of money.
It was like giving like a panhandler on the train.
Exactly. You're like, I know you are not going to use this for anything good. So
it's a thought that counts.
By the way, we have a very horrible problem with homelessness in America.
We do.
But that's not something that can be solved by panhandling or by giving $5 in there. It's something that can be solved by not spending $600 billion on your military and giving tax breaks to the rich.
Or the fact that we have more homes in foreclosure and empty homes all across the country that outsurpass the number of homeless people. Not saying give things away for free, but hey,
that the amount of money spent on all of Donald Trump's golf trips, $64 million, could have paid for every homeless veteran in this country to have a place to
sleep. Or the $75,000 per inmate in California could pay for,
Absolutely.
So there are ways to solve homelessness besides giving away my $5.
Yes.
Damn you, Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
So my minute
to
talk
Gary
about...
Johnson is homeless.
He might be. He's a libertarian, so why would he care about where he lives?
He's off the grid right now.
So my 1 minute on Paul Ryan, leader of the 115th Congress of the United States, who said he wouldn't take the position unless he could have the weekends off to be with his family, and now he's claiming that his family is the reason why he doesn't want to maintain his leadership role. So you have Representative McCarthy from California and Scalise from Louisiana, who is the majority whip, and McCarthy is his deputy, Paul Ryan's deputy, that are jockeying for position to take over the leadership role. However, most Republicans think that it's a little bit preemptive because if they lose their majority, then they will lose their speakership in November. However, they could still have their leader in the Republican Party. The Freedom Caucus is what would hold them back from guaranteeing that a Republican would have the leadership position, even if they lose the majority by a slim margin. With regards to Paul Ryan, who I think probably is Aaron Rodgers undercover, I'm not really sure because I can only see one eye right now. But I think that he is a very shrewd politician, a person who at 48 is going to retire with a full pension and health benefits, but rails against anybody using something that we all pay into like Social Security or disability or any of that stuff. That was considered the future of the Republican Party and then suddenly is taking a step back among the 30 or 40 different Republicans that are retiring this year because they know that either their win is untenable or that the GOP has shifted so far to the right in the Trumpian era that they don't have any real way to get their point across of what they think that the Republicans, the GOPs, and conservatives should be. I think he's abandoning ship right after the Titanic hits the iceberg rather than waiting to find out that it's sinking. He realizes that there's that he could easily win his seat again. He could easily win re-election and might have been able to hold on to his speakership. But unlike John Boehner,
if the GOP won, he would have won the speakership.
Unlike John Boehner, he's not the emotional type that's going to fling his arms up and get red and cry and do all this other stuff. He's just going to sit back, use the tried and true Washington excuse. And
I don't read Trump's tweets.
What do you think about his comments on the fact that it couldn't be avoided? The $1 trillion deficit. I mean, this is a deficit hawk for all intents and purposes.
Oh, yeah.
He rails against any increase in the budget. Mm-hmm. He railed against when Obama was president, but all of a sudden he's saying, hey, $1 trillion, we couldn't help it, but I got my tax plan. So what do you feel about that?
I just want to give a quick shout out to Terry O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in. I one of my favorite things to do when I was back home is karaoke at a local bar in Rio Grande.
You guys should trademark that.
Yeah, karaoke. He has that trademark. That's his company.
He's the man.
It's good stuff. He is. He's a good guy.
But what I was gonna say is, there's another option for the retirement, or another reason. Maybe it's mission accomplished. He got the tax cuts.
He did. A lot of people do say that he got everything he wanted. Yeah. The only thing he would have ever really wanted more would have been to get Social Security and Medicare, which it's okay to
not
give.
off the table yet.
Yeah, it's not off the table yet, but depending on what happens in November, you could see that there would be a sharp turnaround in the thing. Again, if Donald Trump is still president, we can only say that Democrats would be able to put a roadblock in his agenda. People like Bernie Sanders say that his agenda would be dead, but that's not really true. The president, as we saw with Obama and a Republican Congress, is still able to get certain things done, while there are things that he can't get done, like appointments to the Supreme Court. When you have a thief sitting in the ninth seat.
We're coming to Neil Gorsuch
we are.
in a minute.
Hold your
bastard.
Horses. Hold your
bastard.
horses.
Rat bastard. So so that was my little spiel on Paul Ryan. Honestly, there's a couple points in my life when I thought, he's a good guy.
Why?
I liked him.
Why would you think that?
There was a couple times when he got up on TV unprompted and things like, he said, I'm really sorry for ever, saying things about, the poor and stuff like that. Like, he never really understood them. You're talking about a person who was able to get where he is because of some forms of public assistance or some forms of, people taking care of each other. And he would, while campaigning, you say a lot of things that you might not mean because you want to rile up your base or you want to get people involved.
Yeah, but does that make you a good person then?
No, but I've never before really thought that Paul Ryan was malicious.
Yeah, neither
I thought
did
that
I.
he was just a really staunch conservative.
Yeah, and he has his ideology, he has his beliefs, and he
that
sticks by
held
that.
to them.
Yeah. And I can respect that. I don't have to agree with it, but I can respect that.
Okay,
I have respect for Paul Ryan, and that's about as far as it goes. Would he have made a good vice president back in 2012 with Mitt Romney? I don't know.
Okay.
But I do have some respect.
Mitt Romney would have been a way better president than Trump. We're kind of regretting that right now.
So here's the thing, though.
Here's
right?
the thing.
We could say Paul Ryan has principles, but does he? Like, what were those principles?
Well, he's never backed off on them except for when it came to the deficit.
He stayed silent for everything Trump has done.
That's not true.
Because
And his main principle was he's a deficit hawk.
Yes.
And then he signed
I don't think anybody ever called Paul Ryan a deficit hawk. I think people said that he was just a strong conservative, that most of his conservatism was fiscal conservatism and entitlements and social conservatism.
And then he says a $1 trillion deficit. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't
sign that. He had enough trouble getting Republicans to rally together.
So you're saying it wasn't his ideal version of the bill?
I agree. It was not his ideal version of the bill. I realized that he needed, because the Freedom Caucus of the Republican House, which is about 36 members, which is more than is needed to bridge the gap between the two parties in the majority, he wasn't able to work with them as well as he could. So you have to go to Nancy Pelosi for certain things, which is why a $1.3 trillion budget is passed right after a $1.5 trillion tax.
Are you laying this at the feet of the Democrats now?
I am partially laying it, of course, because the Democrats are supposed to be campaigning this year on looking out for America, but they signed off on this $1.3 billion budget. And while in past episodes we talked about how good some of the things that are being spent on, we're talking about the American deficit is going to be upwards of $2 trillion in the next decade. $21 trillion in debt. That's impossible to pay.
We're going to be servicing our interest of $1 trillion.
We're talking about 125% debt to income ratio. I mean, would anybody give you a car loan for that? Would you get a loan from a bank for that? Yet we are still able to sell our bonds. That Steve Mnuchin in the Treasury Department is saying, let's weaken the dollar to make exports stronger. Let's put tariffs on all these other countries and try to make it's not helping at all.
So again, I hear you, right?
You hear me because I'm yelling.
That's that too. But he still signed the bill. And the idea that...
He didn't sign it. Donald Trump signed the bill.
Okay. He put the bill forward.
And he passed it.
He helped pass it forward.
But again, this idea that, man, it's not his fault.
It's his fault.
Because, it's like there's other stuff going on and there's like people in the government that won't like do things his way. Isn't that always the case for every speaker ever in the history of the Republic?
He sold out enough to get what he felt was his landmark legislation.
And he gets to bow out gracefully. He doesn't get to leave thinking that he was pushed out or that he was defeated. He gets to leave on his own terms.
So basically, he took a shit on the table.
He
shit the urinal.
Yes, he did, and walked out without any.
Steve, I think you're peeved at the fact that there might be some respect towards him, and I don't think you should be so peeved because any politician. I mean, show me anyone, regardless of party, who hasn't sold out to pass something, who hasn't cut a deal. And again, I'm not saying I agree with the guy. I'm not saying ideologically I align with anything that he believes or anything. But to Joe's point, for the last 20 years, this guy hasn't flip-flopped on almost anything. And I can respect that at least. Like a Rand Paul, like a Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. Like those people don't flip-flop. Like they have their beliefs and they stick to them regardless. And that's all I can say about him. That's where my nicest stops.
When he goes on TV and says, I don't read Trump's tweets, or you could go and say like, of course what Trump's words were racist, and then you go back and all these things that he says that you allegedly
don't read,
completely stand against, you have no opinion on them.
It doesn't mean that. No, it's not that he doesn't have an opinion on him. He has a
doesn't
job
wanna
to do.
and
He's
he doesn't
Speaker of
wanna
the
share
House
his
of
opinion.
Representatives.
Is that his
he
opinion
has
to critique
constituents.
Are your principles stronger? Like, so my point is, if you're a man of if you're a man of principles, do you not speak on the things that go against your
or do you
principles?
just choose the ones that best suit what you're doing? Because
Yeah.
he
So
has
then that's
spoken to
situational
some
ethics.
effect. He's spoken to some effect, and in part, his retirement is because he cannot just go against every single thing that the president does. He's a standard bearer of his party. The Speaker of the House of Representatives is just that, the Speaker of the House. He is a representative of his own district and has work to do there. I mean, you can't expect a person who values his family. I mean, this is a man who does go home to watch his kids play in their sports. You know, he watches their games. This is a person who, for all intents and purposes, is a good person at heart, but whose views and ideologies are a little bit abrasive towards what the general population or what a progressive ideal for America should be. Now he has definitely gone against some things that Donald Trump has said, and he withheld a lot of support.
But it shouldn't be his job to do so.
It's not his job to do that.
And he's not even the dissenting party. If he was a Democrat, maybe
I put him up against Mitch McConnell and ask yourself who has been more of a cuck to Donald Trump.
Mitch McConnell, flat out.
I mean, is Paul Ryan's wife working in the transportation department? I don't think so.
And real quick,
look at Jeff Flake.
Okay.
Right. Look at Bob Corker.
Again,
right?
retiring.
Well, he's retired too.
So you're saying, but.
All the ones that are retiring are the ones that are about to say, and this just happened. Next week, you could see Paul Ryan say something, you know, like, I support a bill that would limit how much money Donald Trump could spend on golf trips. You know, when we're talking about the fact that we can't afford all these deficits and stuff like that, where can we cut spending?
And at the same time, I think Jeff Flake and all these people, they're positioning themselves for a primary run against Trump in 2020. I don't see Paul Ryan doing that. The only way I can see Paul Ryan even being interested in running for president again, maybe 2024, if there's no real leader coming out, and I don't even think he cares for that. I mean, I think Mitt Romney had to convince him to run for vice president.
Cuts. He's fine.
That's what I'm saying. He's done. He's going home.
My only point
he graduated.
You cannot sit
he got a B
here
on his senior seminar
and roll against the last administration because of for deficit spending, and you cannot sit there and say, I think poor people have it too good in this country, which is essentially what he said, and then come back and tell me that this is a good guy. He's not. Sorry.
No, agree to disagree.
Sure.
Did we find the video of Rudy Giuliani?
I just think that we're all allowed to have our ideological beliefs, to have what we feel would be the right thing to do or not the right thing to do, and that's based on a lot of different things. I mean, the way we all grew up, the way we were brought up, our experiences as individuals. And for us to call him a bad person because we don't agree with him, because he might be ignorant to what maybe a minority or a poor person struggled with growing up, I don't think might make him an ignorant person. I don't think he's malicious. That's all. I've just never gotten a malicious vibe from him. Maybe an ignorant vibe. Maybe he is entitled and he is privileged. I mean, he is privileged. Who the hell gets to, at 48, say, hey, guys, I'm calling it quits because I want to hang out with my kids?
He's going to have such a cushy
job.
At
48, I'm probably still going to be working.
But somehow, people that are struggling, they got it too good.
Bootstraps, Republicans.
It's their idea.
This is my point. I'm just saying, like, let's just understand, like, because we can wrap things in pretty words, but let's talk about what he really wants.
For sure.
Rich people are paying too much money, and poor people have it too
because
easy.
he believes in trickle down, which
put all the pretty words you want on that. Like, that's what's happening.
Okay.
And that's the but
I just don't think he wakes up in the morning like, hey, I'm gonna fuck poor people today.
All I can say is that if the Republicans maintain their majority, that I would much rather see McCarthy from California take over than Scalise of Louisiana.
Oh, okay, so we're doing it.
So I think that's how that should be. And the last thing that we had under the umbrella of this topic was to talk about Mike Pence and Sarah Sanders publishing a picture of him in the Situation Room as missiles are being launched at Syria when he was in Peru at the time.
No, we brought it up, I think, last week. Right?
So I just wanted to mention that is just another proof that Sarah Sanders is just
fucking
a propagandist who is doing her job. She's just doing her job. I get that. At the same time, she is unable to separate the fact that she is contributing to the downfall of trustworthiness in the American government, all to cash out a paycheck and all to make her dad happy,
what if she's
to make
trying
Donald
to
Trump
fix her
happy.
eye?
Listen, if she needs
No,
something,
but
she
like-
start a GoFundMe.
The makeup's gotten better, so I think she
Okay.
definitely made a
Yeah,
point
because
of
she has
someone
like a
to
$75,000
Yeah.
makeup artist that Donald Trump
I thought-
basically forced her to hire.
I thought that was Ivanka, but okay.
By the way, LeVar from On the Real says he does not believe that Paul Ryan is malicious. He just thinks he doesn't give
a fuck.
hoot.
Well, I mean, you don't. I mean, after so long, I mean, when do you have to? So, the other thing I just wanted to mention about Mike Pence, I think it's pretty cool, is that a federal judge has struck down a law he signed as governor in Indiana
Yes,
that
I did want to
prohibited
bring that up.
abortions based on discretion, or they said anti-discriminatory abortion law, which meant that a woman was banned from having an abortion if the child could be proved to have a disability, or if they were doing it because it was a specific race or gender, which you can totally understand about the race or gender one. But, you know, if you're about to have a child and doctor tells you this kid's going to be born with 4 legs or will not have a successful life, is not viable outside the womb,
You shouldn't be
or will
forced.
cause harm to you, you shouldn't be forced to go out of state or go somewhere else. The Supreme Court, 1992, has already set a lot of precedents. You know, we talk about Roe versus Wade, that it is a violation of your 14th Amendment rights to privacy, and that a woman should not be forced to go through extra extraneous measures. Because if you, I mean, I just want to take a little mantra from conservatives that if you take away all the guns, then only the criminals will have guns. Well, if you take away a woman's right to an abortion, then she's just going to get them in a unsafe and criminal fashion.
Yeah, and my thing with the Republicans has specifically on this topic, or the topic of gay marriage, for example, has always been that they are the party of live and let be, right? Minimal government intervention. You have the right to, you know, pursue your happiness on your own, and the government should interfere in the least amount of, you know, possible way, right? But yet they feel that they have to go and legislate what a woman does with her body. And again, I'm not saying that I personally would, you know, advocate for an abortion if I found out my wife had a child with Down syndrome or autism or something. It's, well, as a husband, I feel it should be part of the conversation. But
I don't know about, I mean, autism is not
ultimately
grounds
not a
for
part.
that.
No. What I'm saying is that
I understand what you meant by that, but I mean,
No, but
autism
there
is
are-
not a disability. It's like
or Down.
you're
Okay,
not viable
let's
outside
stick,
the womb.
Let's stick to Down syndrome,
Yeah.
right? There are tests that are given really early on. My wife took both of them when she was pregnant with my children. That they kind of search for it to tell you early enough, hey, this might be the situation. If a person wants to go forward with it or not, that should be up to the person. I'm not advocating either or. I'm not, you know, that's not me personally. I'm not saying where I would be with that. But I just think a government should not legislate that at all. And a woman has a right to do with her body what she wants. And I just find it funny that Republicans should be the party that backs that, and they don't. And it's all on religious grounds. And you know, religion has no place in our government. It was
Religion
made
has
that
a
way.
place in government only in so much that a person representing somebody in government is more than welcome to have their beliefs
course.
and to share those beliefs, but they
not
should
let it
not be
legislate,
legislating solely based
on
on
that.
those beliefs, especially when there's enough precedent and enough law and constitutional protections that stop that from happening. They do it anyway. I mean, we're talking about, you know, governors all over the place sign bills all over the time that they're positive are going to be overturned, but they do it for the photo op.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Mike Pence did right before he decided to take up the vice presidency. So I think we should move on.
Yeah, and before we move on, I do want to touch upon something Terry said before. I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding it, so feel free to correct yourself, Mr. O'Brien. But if that was kind of like a sarcastic dig at Obama's traveling habits, I have to respectfully disagree, because Trump blew that number out of the water year 1, and he's on pace to, I mean, make that number like unrecognizable. Obama took as many trips as Bush and Clinton did, maybe less, I think, than some, and that was just a talking point narrative to make it seem like this guy was lazy when he was anything but. And I would really want to point out that I think 50% of Trump's presidency has been spent 20% has been spent either at a golf course or at Mar-a-Lago, in which he's making money off the taxpayer at his own properties, which technically is illegal. So again, I mean, if you want to keep the facts there,
as illegal as they want it to.
only as illegal as they want it to be.
The
But, you know,
emoluments.
I wanted to point that out.
Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, the part that deals with emoluments, does say that the president or thereof is not permitted to take any kind of gifts, titles of nobility, anything like that, unless Congress consents to it. So if Congress consents
But they
by appropriating a budget, now I used to believe otherwise here, but every time I read the Constitution, and I know I'm a dork, but I do. I mean, before the show, I'm just sitting here just like reading it. just reading it, and I reread that section in that article, and I went to myself, if Congress appropriates the money for him to do this, is that not in effect giving him permission? Is that not consenting to it?
Is there a line item in the budget that...
Yes, because all appropriations come from Congress, and if there's money to spend, and if he's spending money, then that means... Sorry, Terry, there was no evil eye there. Then that means...
It was a stank eye.
It was a stank...
That's very different from an evil eye.
If Congress appropriates money to the White House to be used for these purposes, and then he uses them for those purposes in some form or fashion, I do believe that is some kind of a consent for it. So I have a little bit of trouble, especially considering that Maryland and I think it was New York or one other state has decided to move forward with an emoluments case. But they're talking about his overseas properties and stuff like that too, which I totally understand. With the money appropriated by Congress, it is being used for his golf trips and his trips to Mar-a-Lago and the security that the Secret Service is using, and even though their budgets are
local
exceeding,
police departments, which they do help out in Florida,
and Congress then appropriates money to reimburse some of them, like New York City, even though it might not be the full amount they asked for. So they're saying they're
consenting by doing that.
I think that it's consenting, by
and it would
decree.
Be hard to bring. Yeah. Okay, all right. So let's move forward then. Senate Judiciary Committee.
Yes.
So this week, Mitch McConnell came out and said that he will not allow a vote, or not even a vote. He's not going to allow a bipartisan bill to reach the Senate floor, in which it's a bill that would essentially protect Bob Mueller from being fired by Trump. Mm-hmm. He said it's not.
Well, I think it's not just specifically Robert Mueller. I think it's to prevent a special prosecutor,
and there's provisions in it that they would have to review it, and they could put him back. And again, I think a couple weeks ago you had gone into more detail about that. Yeah. I love that image. All right, so the point is that Chuck Grassley, one of our favorite Republicans and the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has said
from
Iowa, he said that despite McConnell's tantrum, he will be moving forward with a committee
vote. Well, maybe not exact words, but his paraphrase was, while we respect what Mitch McConnell has to say, and his opinion definitely matters, he does not have authority over the Judiciary Committee. And that's Chuck Grassley's chairmanship. And if he and a number of other people in that committee decide to let the bill out of committee, then it does go to the Senate. Now, whether or not Mitch McConnell posts it or not, we don't know. I mean, we already saw he was willing to wait a year to block Obama from his constitutional right to appoint a Supreme Court judge to fill Antonin Scalia's seat. But so we know that Mitch McConnell is very willing to do that, and especially considering that his wife was given a job by Donald Trump, that he knows that the patronage is on there. So I do understand that it's very possible Mitch McConnell will prevent this bill from going anywhere, but that doesn't mean the bill is necessarily dead. If it makes it out of committee, it's still technically alive unless it's voted up or down. I mean, the concealed carry reciprocity bill is still in the Senate.
But does it really matter if it's alive if it doesn't get voted on?
It does if the majority flips in November, because that bill will still be on the docket and it can still be brought up, as far as I understand. Okay. And I do also want to do a shout out to Prince, because they found a copy of him singing "Nothing Compares to You" from 1984, which Sinead O'Connor made popular. But Prince is one of the greatest musicians of all time, and I do thoroughly miss him. But something that Prince was an advocate of was treating people with respect and having equality and stuff like that. And if someone like Mitch McConnell thinks that American democracy is based on his will in the Senate, and that he has the control, and that if he doesn't approve it, then it's not democracy, I think that's terrible. And I think that there should be rallies and protests. Yeah. I think people should be banging down Mitch McConnell's door, telling him, let this vote happen, because the only reason to block a bill like this, the only reason to cut the Senate...
If it was partisan.
Well, okay, calm down. The only reason to block a bill like this, to let lawmakers go home early but then extend the work week so that Senate Democrats can't campaign in red states, is that he is just an absolute proof that he is not for the republic, that he's not for the union or for democracy, that he is a person looking out for himself and his loyalists and the president because he owes the president, nothing more. He's not trying to do better for the Senate. He's not trying to do well for the people of Kentucky, for the United States. He is doing for himself and himself alone. Mitch McConnell is a horrible person. There are very few people in this world and in politics that I genuinely have a small amount of hatred for, and one of them is Mitch McConnell. I think he's just an absolutely horrible person. I cannot think of one thing that he's ever done in the positive. You know, the bill to allow Tammy Duckworth to bring her baby onto the floor.
Yeah, what's going to happen if there's 10 kids on the floor?
That was Orrin Hatch.
Oh,
but
okay.
you know, that passed unanimously. That was something that all of his conference was for. So he couldn't stop something like that. But I genuinely believe that he would have if he could have, because it would have hurt a Democrat, because it would have hurt a woman, it would have hurt a disabled veteran, and not that he would ever just blanketly say that he has a problem with veterans. He does not care about them. He doesn't care about sending troops to war. He doesn't care about young people dying because it makes money for him and his own.
And it's not his kids out there dying.
Yeah, he doesn't have any kids, about to be shot down over Laos like John McCain was.
I'll give you my short version of it, because you pretty much said everything I wanted to. It's just the fact that I think this is a bipartisan bill. It deserves to be heard. And if the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is headed by a Republican, says it should move forward, then it should, and then give the chance to have an up and down vote. And if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And then at least you had the vote, and that is the democratic process. But for him to single-handedly say no because he feels he's protecting his boss because he's a fucking cuck, then it is what it is, and that's where I stand with that.
Okay,
I really have nothing else
just want to add two things. In my mind, the way I see the world, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are in the same boat.
Whoa.
Right? I said it.
Okay.
Fight me.
Sure.
My next question is...
Come at me, bro.
What exactly does cuck mean?
It means
someone who likes to...
A submissive, subservient person who actually enjoys being submissive.
Yeah.
And it's usually
a male
like to a female or a male to another
So basically
male.
another male would be, in most cases, another male would be performing a sexual act with your partner, and you're there watching and getting off on it. So
for all your educational purposes, please tune in to the Second Page podcast where we explain literally everything.
So if you had a wife and you let someone else fuck her, and then you're watching and you're enjoying it, you're a cuck. He's a cuck to Trump.
I feel like you should have just told me. You'll tell me this off camera. But
you could have done that.
But all right.
Hey, you asked for the explanation. Yo.
Now,
well, somebody had to.
Favorite guy in the world, Joe. Neil Gorsuch.
Oh, even that name, it just I hate him.
He's laughing in your face.
He is. Now,
are we having internet connection problems, by the way, right now?
I don't know. I'm looking fine on the phone.
No, it's just me.
So
it's just me.
I think it's just the computers. So the mobile thing is working fine as far as I'm concerned.
All right, no worries. So get to your boy. Get to Neil.
Oh, Neil. One giant leap backwards for all mankind. Neil Gorsuch, though, I know liberals are all crazy, like, oh my God, he's doing something for us.
Not a big deal.
He did not do anything for liberals. We're talking about the fact that the Supreme Court was reviewing an immigration rule that basically was trying to define whether or not the federal government and ICE had the authority to deport people who are here legally back to their countries for things like for something of an aggravated nature. Now, the liberals on the court believed that the law was unconstitutional, that they can't just deport a naturalized citizen or somebody who is here legally for whatever reason they want, because the ICE and federal agents were very broadly interpreting what was a law meant to get rid of real criminals, people who are violent and aggressive. And they were taking things like, someone raising their voice too loud or getting into an argument with a police officer or yelling out threats in anger that we all know very easily could be interpreted as you don't mean them. And they were deporting people, people who have been here forever, have no criminal record, things like that. Neil Gorsuch did not side with the liberals, but he concurred with them and voted with them in 5-4 decision that basically he was saying that Congress was too vague with this law, and if they wanted the law to be, that they could, that it wasn't, he didn't believe it was unconstitutional.
5-4?
The 4 liberals plus Gorsuch.
Where did Kennedy lie with that?
I think Kennedy is on the right. So
no, I'm saying wait. All right, that's weird. Okay, sorry.
In any case, you have this decision which Neil Gorsuch wrote a concurrence to, saying that he believed that Congress has this right, that they can put this law forward, but that they're too vague and it was overly broad and they need to be specific. So If they rewrote the law to be specific, then he would probably have flipped his vote and would have been fine. But being a libertarian, being someone in the mold of Antonin Scalia who just reads the Constitution word for word, just like some people who read the Bible word for word and don't care about, that it makes insinuations or it's open to interpretation. He's not that type of person. He doesn't believe in the interpretation of the Constitution. He believes in the strict application of the words.
He probably believes the world is 6,000 years old.
Yes.
Probably, and the dinosaurs walked hand in hand with men.
And speaking of dinosaurs,
where did oil come from?
This is like completely unrelated. But I just watched the series finale of that Jim Henson show, Dinosaurs. Do you guys remember that show?
No.
I'm Not the Mama. I'm
Oh,
Baby.
yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Did you know that in the final episode of that show, they literally all died?
No.
Wow, that's...
Like,
okay.
all the
You're talking about the baby that used to be in the egg, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool, yeah.
All the food was gone. The Ice Age was coming along. The volcanoes were all going off, and the sun was not going to arise for another several 100,000 years.
Wow.
And they all died, and they just looked out the window and said, no matter what happened, we'll be together. And then they pull out, and you see that the Ice Age is starting. Like, that's it. They're dead. No food left on the planet.
This is a kid's show. Hey,
I don't know.
Back when you didn't have to worry about being
Check it out.
kid sensitivities.
Listen, there's a lot of kids shows out there.
And
that had
by
some
the way,
stuff.
the analogies there, or the allegory there, was that they were so caught up in technology, that the technology that they went after to make their lives so convenient brought about the end of the world.
Sounds like The Last Days of Krypton, a book I've just recently finished reading and highly recommend to anybody who sees parallels in the world we live in today.
When you told me you read it, I went to go look for that graphic novel,
$6.
I realized it was a novel.
It's $6. Yeah, it's a real novel. Yeah. He got all the licensing from DC. It's a very, very, very good book.
Is
easy
it
read.
Worth my Audible credit
Absolutely.
this month?
It's $6.
I'm about to
buy
get
it. Just go buy it on Amazon for $6. Don't waste a credit.
Just saying.
Jeez, I'm just saying, boo. Nonetheless,
that's again.
Neil Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch.
In 2 weeks, he'll
has
be
the
over,
word "suck" in his name, or such.
Neil
at least.
Gorsuch.
Neil Gorsuch.
Neil Gorsuch.
But he sucks.
Well,
so, nonetheless, I don't foresee this as anything with him going forward and voting with liberals now,
I'm sorry.
or going against Donald
everybody,
Trump.
Breaking news.
What?
I said the same thing, Terry.
Terry, you're
I said the same thing.
Wrong.
I said the same. No, Terry,
show.
I agree with you.
Oh my God, it was terrible.
I watched it on the plane.
The Flash was
movie
embarrassing.
Was worse.
The Flash
than
was funny.
Batman versus Superman.
He was funny.
Dude, he was tripping
Batman
over
versus Superman
himself.
suck it.
All right,
No.
shut the.
You wouldn't
Justice
trip over
League
yourself
is
if you were
worse.
running on lightning bolts. Are you kidding me?
I
thought
don't
it was
get
good.
me started.
I'm
I did like
I'm
a
not.
That's for a
2-hour
different
episode
show.
On the reel
I
about
know
how
that
bad this movie is.
Terry, you have to understand that
Please.
Steve is an
I'm
avid
triggered now.
superhero. He's so triggered right now,
And
you
I am
triggered him.
too. I am too.
But you can't call him a snowflake for obvious reasons here.
BVS
okay?
was better than Justice League. I don't want to say it was awesome.
I didn't see it, so I can't
Martha.
comment.
Oh wait, what?
Martha.
Now I'm done trying to kill you because you said Martha.
No, but forget about that. The point is, BVS failed spectacularly, but they tried to do something.
And Batman was awesome in BVS.
And
I liked them.
Justice League just got cut down to whatever they could get a bunch of sizzle reels for. And there was no.
But isn't that all we want?
There was no pacing. You were jumping up all over the place.
Telling me Infinity War is not going to have a bunch of sizzles?
Yes, but guess what? There's emotion and balance there.
And they've been working at it for 20 films over 10 years to get to where they're going to get to, all right? Justice League just wanted to catch up to that and cash in, and they fucking dropped the ball, all right? That's all. I'm sorry.
If Neil Gorsuch was a movie critic, he probably would say something like, well, I think Superman's cape was a little bit too long to have been flying, or something like that. Or Aquaman shouldn't have powers outside of the water.
Is officially off the rails. It's audio fart Terry. Let's move to the next thing.
Oh, with a name like O'Brien, I'm pretty sure we do.
Well, I mean,
by the way,
his Facebook picture
Batman
is on
did
there.
have an Ayn Randian philosophy in sort of that movie.
Yeah.
He really, and they borrowed lines from Dick Cheney. Like, if there's even a 1% chance that
no apologies, Terry.
That Superman could do something, we have to take it as an absolute certainty, as though he's a nuclear missile, and it's about sort of trying to control whatever. I don't want to get into.
Listen, that's why they got rid of the Hulk. They threw him into space. Okay, so next topic, because Neil Gorsuch is. Oh, I hate that guy. He put on his big boy robes.
Yeah. All right. So I'll take the next one.
Yeah,
so,
let's go.
So earlier this week, after months of anticipation, after actually being pushed back a bit, on this past Thursday, officially Raul Castro stepped down as the president of Cuba.
Will still be the leader of the party for 3 years.
He will be the secretary of the Communist Party in Cuba for the next 3 years, which is the seat of power. But for the first time ever in their history, they are being ran by a person not named Castro.
Could we say that they've been castroated?
You may.
I think castrated would have been a better punchline.
Yeah.
Castrated would have been, but it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
You know, so there's a lot of excitement in the country. The man who has assumed the position was handpicked.
Hey, Dr. Principe, how you doing, Doc?
Hey, Doc. He was you know, he was handpicked by Raul. He's been the first vice president for a couple of years now, and he is now officially the president. Is Miguel Diaz-Canel, and
is he a cuck?
No.
He's a very uninspired party leader that up until very recently was not anywhere to be found.
No, that's not true. I wouldn't know if he's uninspired. He just kept a low profile.
He's a loyalist. He's a party loyalist.
He is, which all people pretty much have to be, I guess, in Cuban politics.
Hey,
but,
Mike, what's happening?
That's Doc. That is Dr. Michael Principe.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doc.
He's the reason I have this in my head. This Constitution, he inspired me to care about this and understand the full weight and breadth that this has in our society. So,
all right. So with that, can we get back to Cuba?
Go to Cambridge.
Okay.
So
yes.
Can we get back to
Cuba?
To Cuba Libre.
Havana.
Long story short, they have a very interesting electoral process. He's not voted for by the people, but the people elect the assembly members that go to their parliament, and they vote for him. There's no one contesting him, and he will be the president for the foreseeable future. The first vice president now is actually an Afro-Cuban, and the whole
thing. What does that mean?
He's an African American. Well,
no.
he's an African. He's a Cuban
guy with
African descent. Yeah.
Okay.
But the term
not
there is
native.
Afro-Cuban.
Like in Puerto Rico, they have Tainos.
Yeah.
And they have
I see.
Hispanic heritage.
No, it's what they call it. Yeah. At work we have like Afro-Cuban trips or whatever. You know, it is a thing. Anyways, whatever. So the whole point now that the narrative they're pushing is that it's a very diverse assembly. I think over 50% of them are women. One of the youngest assemblies they've had in Cuba. And this is a guy who was born a year after the revolution, so there are no ties to the revolution. So again, I'm not expecting any major changes. He does have the support of the people. This was a guy who in the past has worked very hard. He used to wear his hair long, was a Beatles fan, you know, in a time when that wasn't the cool thing to be in Cuba. His children are musicians.
Ted Cruz used to be a Beatles fan,
so it doesn't make a...
I think he shot John Lennon.
Yeah.
See? Now he's gonna stump for you.
Probably, yeah. Now he supports our show.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, it's been on the national news. We felt it was worthy mentioning, and it is, you know, interesting to see someone that will now be, at least in, you know, in the public view, representing Cuba. That is not a Castro.
After the sonic attack, that whoever did,
Cuba's saying it didn't happen.
Wait, after the sonic attack, did anybody get a tails attack?
Oh my God!
You see,
just stop.
The dad jokes
stop.
are starting.
I need a gold ring.
You can't tell dad jokes if you don't have kids.
No, it makes me a faux.
I'm gonna give you a knuckle sandwich.
See, you're doing it.
Knuckles, really?
All right.
You can tell you can tell what decade we grew up in.
My
so your question, please ask your question.
Is
please ask her.
Now that has happened, I know that we called all our diplomats back.
Not all. There's still some there.
Like 24,
our embassy,
25.
I think our embassy has like 10 people there.
My question is, what are the relations like now? Are things better with this guy? With this new guy? Will more commerce open up to Cuba?
No, well, listen.
I'm just trying to book my tickets.
Most of the Cubans that live in America,
man. Isn't it illegal to travel?
Yeah, you can still travel.
Yeah, it's not illegal to travel.
Most of the Cuban Americans that came here because of Batista's fall and the rise of communism and the anti-capitalism that was brought in by the Castros, most of the ones that came to America and the ones that landed on wet foot, dry foot, and the ones that are here because they were capitalists and Democrats and they didn't believe in the Communist Party's mantra in Cuba, they say that they will never ever support any kind of a relationship between the United States and Cuba until the Castros are gone. Now the Castros are gone. If anything on the face of things, now there is a less reason to be as impositional with things like sanctions, embargoes, and such things like that, trade restrictions and travel restrictions, because despite the fact they're a communist country, that's not a prohibitive. I mean, we've dealt with plenty of communist countries in Europe.
We don't have
China.
an embargo with North Korea.
Yeah,
we don't have
well, we do have plenty of embargoes with North Korea, but not China. China's a communist country.
Okay, the point is, I'm not defending the Castros at all. I'm just saying I was always interested in finding out what would have happened to Cuba if they weren't choked by, a 50-odd year embargo. What would have happened there. They have made a lot of progress in healthcare. Their literacy rate, I think, is a 99.8% higher than the U.S. literacy rate.
It's one of the highest in the world.
You could become an engineer and a doctor, for free. But yeah, there's caveats.
95% tax rate.
People that work in the tourist industry make more money than a doctor makes. So I'm not saying it's a perfect system. There are good things to the system. I don't think change will happen right away, because as long as Raul is breathing, he's still controlling the narrative, and everyone else who has any say in the government is still from the old guard. And until they pass away, until the next generation really fully moves into power,
when Dmitry Medvedev was president of Russia,
because he wasn't really president, then change might happen. The one cool thing I do want to mention about this guy is that he is a hard worker. I'm not going to say exactly how, but I do know people that know him personally. I don't want to put anyone on blast on air. And from what I can tell, he has the support of the Cuban people. I've been to Cuba
Martinez, international spy.
I've been to Cuba 4 times. I've spoken to many Cuban people. They love to talk about politics and American and all that. And there is a dissatisfaction, especially with the young people. Anyone who's able to leave Cuba has left Cuba. And I mean, when you're losing your youngest and your brightest, that's not a good thing for any nation. And there's a lot of people, from my understanding, from the old guard too, that were hopeful in the beginning of the revolution. But now 50 odd years later, they might feel that didn't truly come to fruition. And again, I'm not placing the blame solely on Cuba. The U.S. had a lot to do with it. The international community did as well. But he has the support of the people, and it's just curious to see where that's gonna go, because they're hungry for change. They want some change, and this is supposedly the guy who might bring it. I'm just not that hopeful that it'll happen while Raul is still alive.
Honestly, I mean, conducting a revolution implies the continual change. You're not conducting a revolve, which is one turn around. You go from one government to the other. They wanted a revolution, and those people saw the Castros rule for 50 years and 50 plus years, and realized that their country's stable. They have an okay economy, and that their society is nice. Crime is low, crime
is non-existent almost,
and litter is low. You can get education is extremely high. They export doctors and stuff all over the world in exchange for things like oil and money, like hard currency. Europeans travel there all the time, despite the embargo. South Americans travel all the time. It's really the United States that's left trying to do it, but they're right on our doorstep. So of course, when you sided with Russia, or rather when you sided with the Soviet Union back in the day, it's really hard for America to be like, okay, unless you're India, we want you to buy $15 billion worth of jets.
Though, but Fidel did want to work with the U.S.
He did. If only he had made it onto that baseball team.
But was that an art
so weird
Hitler reference?
It could have been. I mean, look, if somebody had just been like Hitler. Your pictures are nice. I like it. Keep up with the good work.
You're
things
admitted.
Might be different.
You're admitted to the art school. Yeah, would have never been.
Things might have been different.
That's really all I had to say on that.
That's about all I have to say about that.
All right.
Anybody else want to talk about Cuba?
Cuba Libre.
Like I would.
You guys should go.
Summer's
really
coming.
Beautiful.
I really love a rum and coke.
If you're ever interested in going, I can help you out, Steve. It's a beautiful country. I think you should definitely visit it. The people are resourceful as hell. Like I think they're in a situation in which if an American went down there and lived, they'd cry in a corner. And these people make something out of nothing every day, in and out, and with the best demeanor. I love going to Cuba. I love Cuban people. I think
most Americans would just want to bring back a car.
If I go to certain parts of New York, I will cry in a corner. So let's just be clear.
Rather cry on a corner.
Yes.
All right, last topic of the day.
All right.
Last topic of the day.
We got there, ladies and gentlemen.
And you had requested to not hear too much of our opinions about this beforehand because you wanted to be...
Or he wasn't aware of the LA Fitness thing that happened at Sea Caucus, where I used to go to.
Because I don't like opposing ideas, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. No, let's stick with the communist mantra, right?
My middle name is Bubble.
Yeah.
Bubble.
So racism
Bubble boy.
In Starbucks and in LA Fitness, and this is just
let's
more icing on more cakes and more layers on more cake. I mean, this is just a massive cake because
here's the thing though. cakes are delicious.
They are.
Let's not disrespect.
Not
cakes
all
with
cakes
this
are
situation.
delicious.
Have you ever had a fruit cake? I mean,
Yeah.
I know there's some people that like fruit cake, but I ain't about to. See, I like a parfait. You ain't never found nobody like a parfait.
See?
It's that tan, Steve. That's
It's a
tan.
tan. It's a tan.
All right.
But okay, so
These two gentlemen here.
The CEO, just to give a little context too, the CEO of Starbucks did say they were going to close over 8,000 stores.
All their stores.
Well, yeah, every store owned by the corporation, not franchises.
Not franchised, yeah.
They closed them all to give racial bias training and stuff like that. We're talking about two men who entered, and 2 minutes later, according to security cam footage, had the police called on them and they were removed. These were people who wanted to use the bathroom yet had not made a purchase and said they were there for a meeting. And yet in that same video, the people were seen to have given a key to the bathroom to a white customer. Is this not true?
No, wrong video.
Wrong video. It doesn't matter. It's all piled onto this cake.
Can I break it down?
It's all piled onto the cake. The fact is that if you are a person of color in this country, you are immediately looked at as suspicion when you enter any retail establishment, whether it's a coffee shop or a toy store or a clothing place or a gym for this matter. And while I may have gotten a little bit of the facts messed up, I think it's completely reasonable to understand how anybody could confuse all of these things because
and it
many
happens
things
too often.
happen
Yeah,
every single day.
Yeah, no, I'll give that
But yeah,
to you.
do please give a complete rundown on this because
you pretty much covered what happened in Philadelphia, so I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah.
The two men walked in. They were there for a meeting with a white friend of theirs who actually showed up as they were being walked away in handcuffs, and he was there in video saying, "What the hell did they do? They were waiting for me." And I can't speak for the both of you. I've been to Starbucks plenty of times, not bought anything, sat down there, read a book, studied, used the bathroom, and no one kicked me out. The two gentlemen's names were Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson. What I do have to give them credit for, and I think it's an admirable thing because I would not have been that calm, they were pretty chill during the whole thing. I would have been there.
Because they didn't want to get shot.
You're probably right, but I would have been very fucking pissed, and I'm really glad that all the white peers around them came to their defense. A lot of them stood up. The woman who recorded it was a white woman, and whose video went viral. And in her account, she was saying they did nothing like wrong. Like they were just sitting there. It didn't have to be what happened. And I don't know if she was fired or if she was transferred to a different location, relocated. But she's no
kind of
longer
like priests that molest children.
And to the story you were talking about, Joe, I think this past week or a couple of days after this happened in a separate location, I'm not sure where, a black man walked in and asked to the code for the bathroom, and the barista said no unless you purchase something. So he stood by the door and waited, and he saw a white person come out, and he asked him on video. He's like, "Hey, can I ask you a question? Have you purchased anything yet?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "How did you get the code?" "The barista gave it to me." "Okay, would you be okay with me coming with me and asking her?" So the guy actually went with him, and he seemed like he was a little uneasy and embarrassed, but he asked the barista, "Why would you give him the code and why not me?" Clearly, it was a racial bias. She had no defense for it. And funny enough, it doesn't even come down to white and black. She looked either Hispanic or Filipino. She didn't look white. So again, you don't have to be white to do
Everybody has a prejudice.
Everyone has a prejudice. And
in some form or fashion.
In some form or fashion. And then
I'm prejudiced against Neil Gorsuch.
And then, Steve, to your point, to what you didn't know. So this past week in LA Fitness, in Sea Caucus, New Jersey, one that I used to actually be a member of, there were these two.
It wasn't in LA.
No, it was in LA Fitness in Secaucus, New Jersey.
Can't trust them already. They're lying.
Yeah, they're lying.
No, it's La Fitness.
I like what you did there. It's La Fitness. So one of the gentlemen's name hasn't been disclosed, but the man who took the video was, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Tashard Oates, Tshyrad. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, so long story short, he went in there. He got a 4-day pass with his friend who was also black, who had been a member for, I think, 8 years. He signed in. They did everything right, and they were working out. And halfway through their working out, a woman approaches them and says, "You didn't sign in. You don't belong here." They explained that, "Yes, we did. I just signed up for a 4-day membership. My friend here has been a member for 8 years." They made him go back to a locker, and he rechecked, he re-scanned his tag, showed up that he was there. Okay, they went back to work out. For some odd reason, they felt that they had to call the cops. They called in, I think, 10 or no, maybe less, but it was more than 5 Sea Caucus cops showed up, and they actually, in the cops' defense, they diffused the situation. They didn't arrest them. They didn't kick them out. Management did ask them to leave, so I think they had to leave, but the cops are there actually telling the guys that, we don't understand why you're doing this, and the guy recorded everything. And in to LA Fitness's defense as well, they fired the manager and they fired the 2 women who were at the desk that day, who they felt escalated the situation instead of working through it for no reason other than it probably was a racial bias thing. So again, it's just in the last 2 weeks we've seen these things happen and happen again. And what I like to do is when I see these videos or these stories on Facebook, on CNN, on whatever, I like to go and I read the comments.
Why?
Because
do you hate yourself inside?
No, because that's where I see the ignorance of people.
He's a bit of a masochist.
Yeah, because honestly, some people are just so ignorant because they're like, oh, well, this never happened to me. I wonder why it's never happened to you. Like, why don't you think of putting yourself in someone else's shoe and being like, maybe why doesn't it happen to me? You know, and saying that, oh, maybe they were being, they were causing ruckus. Maybe they were being loud. Maybe they're... Why would you assume that? Like, why is that? And all these comments are just ignorant.
That's really what it all is. It's the presumption of innocence versus the presumption of guilt, which is what I keep coming back to.
Yeah.
So I think that, and I was talking to you about this earlier, Joe, where we have like race is so ingrained into this country that we all. I don't care who you are. You cannot tell me that you do not see things through a lens of race, and it's near impossible not to.
Mm-hmm.
Now the question is, what do you do about it?
Yeah.
Right? Because saying just if I'm talking to a bunch of men here, saying I don't see race is like saying I don't see cleavage when it's like right in front of your face. Like you see it, that does not mean you act on it.
Nope.
Or you treat people differently. But
unless you're the president.
People do see race, and
of course,
and the issues that we have in this country, because technically, on paper, these people have done nothing by the letter of the law wrong. So, for example, I'm sure in the rule book, this is why the woman or man in Starbucks was not fired. If you don't buy anything, you cannot stay here. I'm sure it says that, but that is not a rule that they enforce.
They
right?
don't.
But now you can't fire them because are you going to tell me that I enforce the rules that you have on the books and now I'm being fired because I enforce the rule, right? So they are between a rock and a hard place. And are they closing 800 stores to 8, recognize 8,000 stores?
No, they're doing it to, they're going to have a racial bias workshop and training
and
for all their employees across. No, but I think...
Everybody, we fixed racism. Thank you. Buy a coffee.
I definitely think it's PR, but I do think that the CEO, Kevin Johnson, who's only been there, I think, since April of last year, so he's relatively new to the company. I think, he met with them. He personally went and flew to,
because
I think, Philly.
To.
Of course he had to, but I think that,
didn't.
And if you've looked at Starbucks Twitter...
PR-wise?
Yeah, PR-wise, he had to. And on their Twitter, their Facebook, obviously, you're being so PC about this. Oh, because one black guy got kicked out, why would you have to close 8,000 stores? And their comments and their response to it has been very on point and on message.
I'm sure they have strong PR people.
They do, but I think they're handling it right. That's all. I mean, we can't shit on them more.
Listen, they made it through the whole Red Cup Merry Christmas nonsense.
Yeah.
So if they can survive that, they can survive this.
Yeah.
One thing that when I see videos like this, I don't like to read the comments because I don't like to.
People are so dumb.
I like to be ignorant of the ignorance in America.
Because you care about your soul.
I do, but I do genuinely
How am I not caring about my
prefer
soul?
to be ignorant of the ignorance of people that like to comment as keyboard warriors, knowing that they will never actually have to be held accountable for the things that they say,
or knowing that they might not be arrested for sitting down at a Starbucks because maybe their complexion's
when you see a
different.
situation like this, when you see two African American men who are, for all intents and purposes, besides the color of their skin, are non-threatening, who are not causing a ruckus, who are not causing violence, who are not yelling, who aren't running around with boom boxes and their pants down around their legs, as every stereotypical idea of a thuggish black guy is. These are people who are customers. They're customers.
Dude, they were waiting for their freaking friends sitting down.
With money that came into a business that is prohibited by law from treating people in a public space differently. What I see, though, in these videos, I see all these people that videotape, kind of like in that episode of Black Mirror. They're just watching through their cameras, and they think that they're doing so much social justice by making these videos go viral and saying that they disagree with all this stuff. But no one was able to really vehemently step in and stop these kind of things from happening. And I'm not talking about just this one video. I'm talking about over time.
Oh, over time, of course. But in that situation,
over time,
I think they handled it well.
They videotape it, and it just not that I think that there's any real way to change this behavior because it's just gotten to a place where it's not. But now you're in a position where police act with impunity. They can take whatever they want, do whatever they want, and then later you find out that you can do something about it. Later you sue them, or later you file a complaint. And how many police officers have gone to jail for killing unarmed people, let alone arresting them?
Not enough.
Arresting them without cause, because they it's not like the police saw a crime being committed and they came in there. They were called by the establishment to come in there and arrest these men
for trespassing.
They had the ability to not do it. They could have chosen to not exercise it right, but they did. And the people all standing around watching did nothing but take out their cameras and just yell things like, "You don't do that. They didn't do anything wrong."
But what, are you gonna fight a cop?
You stand in front of the door. Line up. Stand up for your fellow man.
I think they did right.
You see someone getting bullied on a bus. Are you gonna watch someone get smacked in the face, being called the N-word or what like that, and you're not gonna step in, or are you just gonna sit at your seat, videotape and say, "Don't do that. Don't do that."
Completely different scenarios. I would step in, and I would. I think all of us here would. I think if it's a cop, I mean, you're gonna end up on the fucking floor, handcuffed or tased.
And how many people did that? Ask Martin Luther King how many people ended up on the ground, beaten, mauled. We just got done talking about Martin Luther King. No, let me finish. Let me finish. Because if you want to talk about justice, you want to talk about all the things that we're supposed to be changing in this country, but then say that the most we're allowed to do is quietly yell out and videotape the people that are committing the wrongs. No, you go arm in arm. Okay, so what? If one person had stood up and stood in front of the door saying, "This is wrong, don't do this,"
after?
Who cares?
And someone did. Their friend, who's a white male, showed up as they were being walked out in handcuffs, and he was yelling at the cops like, "What are you doing? Can you explain to me what happened?" He was right confrontational. The woman who recorded it was white. I think most of the people in that store were white, and they were all up in arms about it. So if anything, I don't think they did anything wrong.
They were not up
in
arms. They were up in cell phones.
Whatever. They did what they could do at that moment. But Steve, I'm sorry, Steve, you've been trying to get in there. What do you?
I disagree.
What do you want to throw in your 2 cents, Steve? I think you more than anyone.
You have to throw in your 2 cents, because if you don't pay, we have to arrest you for being here.
Okay. Well, so here is the thing. By the way, that whole thing was hilarious.
It was.
I'm enjoying my time behind the chair.
Hey, Jake's back.
Hey, Jake. So, couple of things.
Sure.
I think that people recording things is the reason we're talking about it right now. Because a lot of people will talk about, police brutality and injustices and things like that. And I grew up in the Bronx. I grew up seeing this. I grew up policing myself because I knew how these things are. So now that everyone has a phone and we're all recording ourselves, and that's a different conversation about us all recording ourselves, that is empowering you, because now the nation is looking at Starbucks, and Starbucks is now forced to look in the mirror. And yes, closing for one day is not going to solve racism, but it's a start, right? At least because you have to have the conversation. Now, as far as the two men being hauled out of there, Starbucks prides itself as being the sort of public square, right? Right. The whole idea is you come there, like we're in the gig economy, so to speak, right? And you come there and you do your work. That's why that's Starbucks' claim to fame.
Yeah.
So now to decide that, okay, some people will come in and we're gonna choose to enforce the rules on one group of people and another. The hard thing here, though, is all these things are discretion, right? And what we have to ask ourselves is, why would a barista or a manager see those two people and say that though I feel like those people are a threat or up to no good, and we can just banish them and call them a terrible person, but I don't think that is dealing with the real issue. We have deep-seated wounds that revolve around race in this country, and the idea that a police officer could see a person of color and be afraid for their lives. I don't doubt that they're afraid for their lives, but why are they afraid for their lives?
Yeah.
Why is the barista seeing these two people of color and thinking they're up to no good? Why is the person in LA Fitness seeing a person that they don't recognize and just think that automatically something's wrong? I have to call the police because of what has been ingrained into them, not just by their parents, but their parents' parents, and all of
or society too.
Yes,
to an
society.
Extent,
so until we can ostracize those people, or we can actually have these things be teachable moments and have the hard conversations. Because what happens on the left is we excommunicate people and just think they need to go away forever, and then that's it. And what happens on the right is they will look at the left and they will use the left overreacting in some things to justify any bad feelings that they have. And also, they will look and say, well, I don't experience that, therefore it must not be true.
Exactly.
Or at least as pervasive.
And I think more to your point, and I think the woman that posted the video said exactly that. She's like, I know I have a lot of family, friends, I have people that say these things don't happen. And I don't recall if she said she herself hadn't seen it happen, but for her to have witnessed it, she's like, these things do happen. And then having a video showing it, because again, in those comments, I haven't seen this happen in my Starbucks. This doesn't really happen everywhere in America. Yeah, maybe because you don't live in a place where it might be predominantly black or brown or minorities. Like I told you a couple weeks ago, I got called a spick by a guy. I could assume he was Italian because he had an Italian flag in his car. Of course, it stuck with me. He called me a spick and yelled Trump. So then I'm talking to these women who I know, who live actually pretty local to me, and I told them the story, and they're like, I don't think you're telling the truth because you live in Hudson County. There's a lot of Hispanics in Hudson County. Doesn't mean there's not racist people in Hudson County. You get me? So unless some people witness these behaviors, they really think that they don't happen because they don't happen to them.
Also, there's another part of like I say, the pervasiveness of racial issues is that people, I don't think, understand many times that racism is bigger than the Ku Klux Klan, and it's bigger than lynching, and it's bigger than the N-word.
Yeah. Right?
It is clutching your purse because you just have a certain intuition.
Or being followed around the store because they think you might steal something.
Again, look, if I'm a security guard and I see a person of color in there, do they look suspicious and they happen to be a person of color, or do they look suspicious because they're a person? And like, how do you know? How do you get into a person's head to decide that? And again, it's so much bigger than these things.
You know what this is?
And the letter of the law, a lot of these things will say, and it all comes back to like the all lives matter and all that stuff, and everything should be equal. In a perfect world, everything should be equal, but everything is not
equal. Of course.
And we have to look at why these intuitions are the way they are. Until we get to that, we can ostracize some person for doing or saying some racist shit, but that's not going to solve the problem.
Listen, I'm sorry, hold on, real quick. Though.
Yeah, but you know what you just reminded me of? Have you ever seen that movie, Don't Be a Menace?
While drinking
yeah.
Juice in the Hood.
Remember that scene where he walks in and then the agent, well, forget that. But they're walking around, the Asian lady keeps going like, what you go buy? What you go buy?
No, hurry up and buy.
Hurry up and buy. And then the white guy's robbing them clean or whatever. And it's like, and that's exactly that. It's like the societal like
the Wayans
assumption that. And I thought it was genius. It's a comedic genius, and it expresses that thought that it's like you're gonna see someone, and again, it wasn't a white person behind
everything they touched.
And it was the other person out there while they were confused and everything, robbing them clean. But yeah, so you made me think about that.
I don't believe that the world will ever be fair, and the world shouldn't be, and the world can't be, but I believe it can be just. There can be justice because people can impose justice on certain things. There's 9 billion people on the planet. Of course, there are going to be people who are going to be horrible. We're going to be horrible to each other. There will be people who believe that mass murder or slavery or torture or abuse in any kind of form is perfectly reasonable or advocates for their cause. One thing that when I was talking earlier and we got into the a little bit louder was that I understand that at least for the argument on the right is that we have the Second Amendment, we have guns and stuff like that to prevent from the abuses of the government, prevent from overreach, and prevent our rights from being violated. I do believe that those men's rights were violated. I do believe that their right to be in that place was violated. And that, on top of all the other stuff that we've seen and talked about over the past 25 episodes, what I see constantly is, yes, you are right, Steve, that putting things on video, making viral, and things like that in the day and age that we live in has definitely shed more light on situations and has definitely tried to hold people more accountable for the things that have always happened. But, recently when we talked about Martin Luther King, we talked about stuff like that. The civil rights movement didn't happen because you could see a video of Martin Luther King giving his I Have a Dream speech, or you could see a video of him marching hand in hand, or even of them getting attacked by dogs and hoses. While that did help, while those images going through white America in the North and in the West and places where it wasn't as prevalent as it was in the South, it did help the cause and cause some people to go. The civil rights movement and the things that were accomplished from that happened because people stuck together, because they were arm in arm, white, black, male, female, child, adult, no matter what they were.
So how's that any different of the people that took the videos now?
Because that's all I'm saying. The people that took the video of Martin Luther King giving his speeches, and the people that took pictures of the dogs and the fire hoses, they did help. They held accountability. They cast light. But the changes happened because people stuck together, because they were willing to go to jail. They were willing to be beaten. Let me finish. They were willing to go to jail. They were willing to be beaten. They were willing to put themselves in harm's way because they knew that something was right. There were people during World War II who knew that the virtual extermination and genocide of the Jews, of the Gypsies, of the communists, of the Marxists, of the gays, of the disabled, of all these people, they knew it was wrong, and some people were willing to put themselves in harm's way, to hide them, to let them escape from the country, to give up all of their wealth, to give up their homes. 1 out of 10, 1 out of 100 were willing to do that kind of thing. What I see more often than not is more people are reconciled to being the one to post a video or to yell out something.
Do you know what happened the day after?
What are you talking about? I'm talking about everything in general. I'm not talking about this one specific video. I know that this is what the topic is.
So what is Black Lives Matter then? What are all these protests that have been going on? These people, a bunch of people walked into that Starbucks the day after that happened, chanting, marching. They closed that store that day and literally put on their Facebook, please go to one of our other locations because we have to close our store. So I mean, that's
just like what I said. When you see the pictures of the dogs and the fire hoses, it compelled people from all parts of the country to come and protest and to go hand in hand.
People have.
But at the moment that these things were happening, when the dogs were being sicked, when the fire hoses were being turned on, the only people that stood together were the people that were already there. Just like these two men that were arrested, they were together, they were being arrested together, they supported each other, and they had their friends that showed up and said and questioned it, but still could not do anything. And whether or not someone what did the people do at Standing Rock when they were trying to prevent an oil pipeline from being built? Did they just sit there and take pictures, or did they link arm in arm, allow themselves to be gassed, allow themselves to be shot?
Yeah, but all those things were planned. All those things had moments to like that had like a course that it had to take to get to that point.
Yes.
You're asking these people to react in the moment as this is happening to block the door and get arrested. I mean, dude, it sounds beautiful.
It does. That's all I'm doing. I'm commenting on it. I'm not saying that is something that every single time a police officer is arresting someone that a bunch of people should get around them and stop that officer from doing their job. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that I have done that in the past. While I would like to think that I would do something like that I would be willing to go to jail for something like standing up for my fellow American, I'm not trying to be hypocritical. All I am saying is a commentary on what it seems like most people would rather be the one holding the camera and just saying that they think something is wrong rather than taking action to prevent it or to stop it from happening. You didn't hear anybody saying that they were, you didn't see anybody going down to the police station to protest. Why did these two officers even follow through with this arrest? You saw them come to Starbucks. They came to the business that called the cops on them. They came and bitched and moaned and complained about the business. And even though it was the decision of one, maybe two people that worked there, then they came after everybody that worked at Starbucks. They painted Starbucks with one brush stroke. That was what the protest was, and those were organized protests. It wasn't just random customers coming in saying, why did you do that? The customers that were there, they watched, they loved it. It was like watching a train wreck.
A lot of them said they were never going back. A lot of them said, I can't ever come back here and I live in the neighborhood.
So they refused to patronize the business because the person working there made a mistake.
I just feel like you're saying things aren't happening And I think they are. I mean, the women's marches, the marches for science, the Black Lives Matter marches. These things are all happening because of things. Every time a black male gets shot by a cop, the community goes up in arms. I mean, I don't know what else you can do. When, like, I mean, the people running the country don't want to do anything else. When the police departments are mostly white in black communities, what else can you do? You get me? Like, do you want to end up as another statistic? Like, I think people are doing as much as you can do, but the rest is going to have to be legislated. The same way, I think Martin Luther King, he got things legislated.
The point of protest in general is to show that people are in solidarity and make people pay attention to start the conversation that will lead to change.
Yeah.
Now, if something being on video starts that conversation that leads to change, then you've done your job.
I agree.
All right, so what change has come about from the dozens and dozens and dozens of videos of unarmed men being shot, people being shot in hotel rooms?
No, but so, like, what is your answer there? Like, people protested that. Should we shoot back at the police? Like, what?
No, you do the same thing that people do when they just got arrested for protesting outside of Paul Ryan's office. You sit there, you allow yourself to get arrested, and you prove that you were willing to put your mouth and your body where your mind is.
People are doing that.
But where are they at the police stations? Why aren't they protesting the police stations?
You don't know what police stations they're at. Is this because it's not on camera doesn't mean that they're not there.
I can see a badge right now. If we had a clearer camera, I'm sure
they got tricked for it. The chief of police had to come out and defend his policeman. He got crap for defending the policeman, and all he said was like, "Well, we were just following the rules. We got called and they were trespassing. We did our job, and people protested that." I get what you're saying, and I love where it's coming from because it's only coming from a place of like passion.
And again, it's commentary. I'm not suggesting that we go and riot.
I get it. Just to me, it sounds like you don't think anything's being done. I think a lot's being done. I just think the people that have the power to change these things, they're the ones not doing anything. And how do you force a hand?
You force the hand by using
keep protesting.
Economics, right? So
don't shop there. Don't go there anymore.
Starbucks is forced to have this conversation now because people are talking about boycotting Starbucks. So now, in order to save them money, they have to go and show the people that they are paying attention, or not, and then people will do what they do, right? So there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I just want to come back to this other thing about the pervasiveness of race. This is a quote from President Lyndon B. Johnson. He says, "If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you." Right? That, which is how you get Trump. Is a statement, not just on Trump. See, again,
in general.
Trump is like he's sort of the extremity, right? But he's not the root cause.
He's not the root cause, but you can look at that as he's the lowest white guy being the president and still being higher than the highest black guy that was president. You get me?
No, sure. But I guess the thing that I'm saying is, and I'll say it again and again, Trump getting impeached or getting voted out is not going to solve these problems because there are forces at play that led him to become president in the first place. And until we deal with those issues, there will be another Trump that comes along. Maybe it's Roseanne Barr. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, God.
Like this is where we are, and we have to look at why and have those hard conversations. Because guess what? Somebody can say some racist or do some racist shit out of ignorance. And you could have a conversation about it and they can learn from it. Now, there are other people that just are in their own bubble that say and do racist shit and refuse to believe that racism exists, so they just want to continue to do that. But my point is, we have to have those conversations. So because racism exists doesn't mean that black people have it all terrible. And because, some people... because you may have it good doesn't mean that everyone else has that same experience as you. So we have to sort of step outside of ourselves and have the hard conversations.
Agreed.
Well,
that's all I got for this week. By the way.
On that, then,
me too.
I think we should move on to our typically, well, at least of recent final topics where everybody just says one thing they wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about today. Steve, you want to go first? Because I know
that was it.
You said some. Well, you said something in the car. You said you wanted to talk about. I think.
Oh no, it's fine. It's just that New York City is gouging working people.
There you go. What is it?
Getting their cars. You know.
Yeah.
I had a car towed, and the fee for towing it was like
$300.
More than that.
Yeah,
it was
right.
more than the ticket. And so yeah,
It's predatory contracts.
It
with
really
the tow
is.
companies.
It really is. And,
$20 convenience fee.
I could afford. Yes. So this whole the thing was like, okay, there was like $450 worth of fees and then a $20 convenience fee. What the F is convenient about charging you for whatever? I'm gonna get upset.
Yeah.
The point is, like,
let's not get emotional.
It happened to me in Queens. I completely.
But this is what I mean. Like,
no,
I could afford to. I couldn't, but I did. Right? I could pay it. Right? But what if I couldn't? What if I needed that car for work? What if I needed? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's just like in southern states when they rescind your driver's license for not paying your student loans or something like that. Like, they don't care. They just want their money. Or they want money for someone who gave them money for their campaign. George.
Actually, I did want to bring something up that we didn't today, and it will go off of that. Cynthia Nixon is running a primary challenge against Andrew Cuomo. And I read a really good article on the New York Times about her this morning before we got here. And hey, she has really, really good ideas.
Yeah, she's progressive.
She's very progressive, and I think she's right about Cuomo. And I think what you just brought up is now, like, he's sold out. He's not really as left as people think he is. He's let a bunch of Democrats in Albany align themselves with Republicans. 8. He's not the progressive champion people thought him to be, and he's pretty much been hurt in New York. And I don't know if she has a chance to win. She did mention in that article, and I don't remember the person's name, someone that ran against him in the primary last time was able to get 30% of the vote in the primary, and that person had no name recognition, no funding, no anything. So, you know, she decided personally to take it on herself because she thinks, A, she has the name recognition, the funding, the money to put up a good challenge. And it'd be interesting. I don't know if she's going to win. It'd be cool, and I think it'd be good for New York. It'd be good for New York.
Who she is? She's from
Sex and the City. Yeah, Miranda, whatever her name was. Yeah.
And she has also said, this is her big like quote that's going around. She's the one that said, "Yes, we should legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
It's always been legal for white
people, and
but
it's true
not for black people because something like 80% of the people that are arrested for this.
Oh yeah, I told
black, even though they smoke.
George on the way here that I enjoyed the Bill Murray quote that said that the most dangerous or worst part about marijuana is being caught with it. You know, there's nothing really wrong with it. But Cynthia Nixon was courting the Working Families Party in New York, at least to get their support, because they need at least 50,000 votes to stay on the ballot throughout the whole state. So if she actually defeats Andrew Cuomo in the primary, it's very likely that the ticket will be split between Democrats and would open the door for a Republican to take over the governor's mansion.
Oh, boy. But so there's one other thing for this, which is, she may be saying some nice things, but is this where we are, where like only celebrities can go and run for public office? This is where we are as a nation or as a state?
I mean, yeah, it would seem so. I think reality TV, I mean, Idiocracy, right? I mean, I think we're slowly becoming what that movie, you know, what that parody or, you know,
or rapidly,
or comedic satire was, or rapidly. I mean, I don't know about rapidly. I mean, it's definitely been progressing. Maybe we did.
Rapidly.
I don't think we saw it coming because none of us thought it could really come true. But I mean, Trump's been flirting with running for years now, and he's always been a reality TV star.
Thing he's flirted with.
I like that, but yeah, I think unfortunately is where we are right now. That if you don't have the name recognition, if you don't have already that popular following, you're not going to be a good candidate, you know, which is why people like Oprah's names are being thrown out, Dwayne Johnson, blah blah blah, whatever. And again, I like them.
When there's
I think they're great,
for other things, for
but
causes.
I don't think they should be representatives of or sit in the Oval Office. You know, like I like both of them. I like Oprah and The Rock. I think they're great. Do I want them to be my president? Not really, but that is where we are right now, and it's sad.
Just one is Obama back,
but I would love for Obama to be back. I think Biden should run with him as VP.
There's nothing that would bar him from being vice president.
Or Obama should just get appointed to a life seat at the Supreme Court. And that would be the biggest FU.
That's the ultimate thing that I would want before I die.
And he wouldn't be the first ex-president to be appointed to a life term.
Taft did it, I think.
Howard Taft did it, yep. And he is a constitutional lawyer. Mm-hmm. So he has all the freaking knowledge to be there. And I think he'd be a great justice,
I think
but I don't think
if
he
Joe
wants
Biden
it.
runs in 2020 and wins, you can guarantee yourself that Ruth Bader Ginsburg retires and Obama gets appointed.
You
to
think
the
he
Supreme
wants
Court.
it? I don't think he wants it.
Of course he
RBG.
does. Who wouldn't?
RBG, bro.
Job for
Well,
life,
first
and
of
he's in his
all-
40s, 50s. I
He's
mean,
like
early
40
50s.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
come on.
Well, the real question, you don't ask Obama to do that. You ask Michelle's permission.
Yeah, you, do.
Yeah.
You have to ask Michelle
Because
first.
if Michelle says no, Obama ain't doing
She
it,
had
bro.
to put up with 8 years of that shit.
It's
I don't
different with
think
the
she's trying
Supreme
to
Court.
This
I
is
mean,
why
you hear
people
60
keep-
cases a year.
People keep talking about, oh, Michelle's gonna run.
No, she's not. She said she didn't want to.
Fucking with
No,
these
she
people
said
in
I'm not
Washington."
running. She's like, I feel I could do a lot to help this country and this world, but she's like, I don't think it'd be from that position. And I think she's right. I mean, I would love to see her run, but she'd be creamed.
Yeah.
They'd find a way to like just ruin her, and
Well,
she's
first
too
of all,
beautiful and
Hillary-
intelligent of a woman to go through that shit.
Hillary
I love her.
was
She's just
like the darling until they felt like she was a threat. Because when she was a senator, she got along with everybody.
oh yeah.
She
She
had money.
played the politician card right. And she was
Well,
like first lady. No one thought she'd be running.
I
Until she did.
agree, but
But-
Hillary Clinton's in the past.
How about you, Joe? What do you want to bring up?
well, two little things. Technically three little
Jesus
things. One,
Christ, Joe.
I thought it was great that on 420, Chuck Schumer tried to introduce a bill that would legalize marijuana federally, take it off of a Schedule 1 substance.
So we could finally study it and find out if it's really bad or not.
And Mitch McConnell.
And Mitch
said no.
McConnell's a dick.
He's a cuck.
That Amazon is partnering with Best Buy because Amazon realizes if it's going to take over the world, it does eventually need some more brick and mortars. So Best Buy will now be selling all of its TVs automatically coming with the Amazon Fire built into their TVs and stuff like that. So they're partnering with them. Amazon's HQ2 is meeting
Is Amazon
again.
going to handle their shipping?
Probably if Trump's actually forcing the post office to review whether Amazon is taking advantage of them, despite the fact that he's taking advantage of the post office. But the Amazon's HQ2 is considering again Newark. It's in the top 20, and they're meeting with Ras Baraka, New Jersey, who's going to offer them $7 billion in tax incentives. And Amazon Amazon promised $5 billion in investment, 50,000 permanent jobs. And the last thing too was that I'd read an interesting article that was basically telling about how the tariff system that Donald Trump is putting into place is causing a lot of, for one, newspapers to suffer because there's a tariff placed, without too much coverage on print media from Canada, and that a lot of companies that are in the production of products that use steel and aluminum are actually considering moving their production to Mexico so that they can reacquire access to cheaper steel and aluminum. There was 2,180 companies that applied to the Commerce Department for an exemption from the tariffs on steel. 240 applied for an exemption on aluminum, and the exemption can only be granted by the Commerce Department or the Treasury if they can prove that they can't easily access the products they need in American industry. So there's well over 2,000 American companies who are already saying that the tariffs are harming them, that it's harming their business, and it's harming their ability to produce a product. Who cares about the raw material? We make plenty of the raw material, but the product, being able to get it cheaply is what makes us be able to afford to make things cheaply. And considering that the minimum wage in America is still in the $8 range, you can't expect that anybody can afford all this kind of stuff, at least in middle America. So especially, with China reinstigating all these 120% tax on sorghum, a lot of farmers are starting to feel that. Trump country's starting to...
That's why he's going back to the TPP.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all I wanted to mention. I
Cool.
thought those were interesting things that didn't warrant full topics.
All right. Well, Joe, where can we find you?
You can find me in St. Louis rolling on dubs if I ever make it out there. But my Twitster is Joseph Soswald. So I think
you're gonna get
I'm gonna get
swolled.
Get swolled.
Hey,
Follow
Mr.
me on
Seymour,
Twitter.
what's happening? Came just in time for us to finish the
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Watch
you can
the
also
rebroadcast.
You can also find us on the YouTubes and the interwebs that you can watch our rebroadcasts
And
and
our
comment.
website.
And our website,
at
the2ndpg.com or .org. It'll all bring you to the same place on WordPress. But Jay has done a fantastic job at building the site and making it look really cool.
Now we just got to keep maintaining it.
We got to maintain it.
get on
Eventually, soon. I just got back from Hawaii, but we're going to start up the blog series. We've got our Twitter. everything going on.
People.
Yeah, we will be taking submissions.
If any of you disagree or agree or anything or want to shoot us, your opinion piece, we'll be more than happy to put it up.
As long as it's not laden with profanity and racism and ignorance, then we will likely.
I don't mind profanity so much.
I don't know, but not laden. Be concise.
We'll put it up. We'll give you credit.
Typos?
Yeah.
No.
Just understand if you submit anything to us that it becomes partially our property and we have the right to disseminate it as we please.
Yes. With that disclaimer.
Jay, where you at?
Where am I at? You can find me on Twitter at jmartinez.jr. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter at The Second Page.
2NDPG.
The 2NDPG. And always, please also like us on YouTube and follow the R Squared Network as well.
Subscribe.
Which is, subscribe, like, follow, click, do all that.
And share.
Please share away.
Sharing is
Michael,
caring.
Brandy, Anthony, Vanessa, Joseph, Shallon, all of you. Share away, please.
Help us out.
And Steve, where can we find you later today?
Oh, okay. That's no pressure at all. But later
you must now perform.
Or later this weekend.
Or at some point this weekend.
Whenever it's convenient for you.
Yes, on the Real, where we will basically going to talk about Infinity War. I mean,
we both got tickets opening night.
What else?
We're
going to talk about
whiskey.
the new Deadpool trailer,
which is also
Steven Spielberg is actually doing a DC.
Yeah,
movie.
Black Hawk.
Yeah,
that's gonna be cool.
F. Gary Gray.
Why would you want to F. Gary Gray?
Is doing No, that may be Antoine Fuqua. Is doing Mask. I don't know if you remember, like there was Transformers and it was Mask back in the days. If you're in your 30s. To get your shit together.
Wow,
but we're going to be talking about that stuff.
All right, cool. I'll be tuning in for that one.
Good. We'll be glad to have you. And you can also find me at Steve A.M. Johnson on your favorite social media network, as long as it's not Snapchat. And again, please take a moment, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell their friends, and comment, because we always respond.
We try.
Don't make us have to buy your private data from Facebook to get in touch with you.
Because we will.
We will do New York Analytica or whatever.
Anyways, R Squared Analytica.
R Squared Analytica. There you go. That sounds a lot better rolling off the tongue.
Right.
Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 25. Catch us next week for 26. Mm-hmm. And have a great weekend. Stay safe.
And hugs,
enjoy
not drugs. By the way,
but
that
also
makes
sometimes drugs.
6 months of this show.
We're a quarter away from 100.
It's a quarter from 100, but
pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
All right, folks.
Peace.
That's all.